What's going on, everybody? My name is Austin. Welcome to the channel where we talk about everything comic book related, movies, TV shows, and comic books themselves. And today we're going to talk about the resurrection of Danny Rand, Iron Fist himself. That's right, this week we got the Undead Iron Fist issue number 1, which follows Danny Rand after he comes back to life. Because nobody ever actually stays dead in comic books. I mean, unless your name is Gwen Stacy, Bruce Wayne's parents, or Uncle Ben, we kind of assumed that this was going to happen. I mean, he's Danny Rand. He was going to come back to life. Now, some of you might be wondering, I didn't even know Danny Rand was dead. And that's because it was released in the 50th anniversary special for the Iron Fist, which came out last year and I feel like wasn't talked about a whole lot. And honestly, most people probably didn't think it was that big of a deal because they knew he was going to come back at some point. But in this issue, he was hunted down by creatures called the Chi Lin, and their sole purpose is to hunt down the Iron Fist warriors and kill them on their 33rd birthday. That is the curse of the Iron Fist. That's as long as they're allowed to live. However, Danny was actually a year overdue for this, and that is why the Chi Lin here, disguised as Razor Fist, apologizes for being a year late. But in this new issue, the Undead Iron Fist number 1, he does come back to life, and he does the same thing. He has more encounters with the Chi Lin because something has brought him back to life. That's enough yapping from me. Let's get right into the first issue. So the issue starts off with someone saying, "Go forth and settle your score, but know this, your time is short." We don't know who this is that's speaking, and then we see a familiar face, Luke Cage, walking through the cemetery, going to visit his best friend, Danny Rand. And at this point in the story, Luke Cage is the mayor of New York, just a little tidbit of information there. But when he gets to Danny's gravestone and looks at it, there's nothing in the ground. The hole is dug up and there's no casket, no body, nothing. Luke says, "Sweet Christmas," and looks over and sees footsteps walking away from the gravestone. And we find Danny Rand wandering through the Lower East End of New York. And this same person says, "You were born into riches, the heir of a business empire, later trained to be an ultimate weapon in a faraway mystical land. You became immortal by slaying a mystical dragon. Then you came down to earth as a defender for the oppressed, a hero for hire. But that all has been mortally taken away from you. Now do what you must. Have your vengeance and fulfill your promise by bringing me their souls." And Danny looks up at an apartment building window and sees 3 people staring back down at him. On the bottom half of the page, we see a flashback to several months ago in the underworld, and we see Danny attempting to climb a cliff. He says, "I am Danny Rand. I was Iron Fist." He says, "I keep repeating that to myself so I won't forget. It's been days since I started climbing this rock, and to no end by the looks of it. Haven't felt hungry or thirsty or even tired. I'm already dead. It's my undying spirit that's keeping me going." He reaches the top of this cliff and looks into a cave and is shocked by what comes out, and he finds a giant dragon who starts to attack him and says, "Now to put that spirit to the test." Danny gets sent flying by this dragon, and the same thing happens to him in real time. Those people that he was looking up into the window at send him flying back down the stairs. This old lady says, "You should have stayed dead, Danny Rand. Let's show him the way back to hell." This unknown person says, "You know them as the infernal beasts that hunt down Kunlun's lineage of illustrious warriors. You want to end every single one of them. I've granted you the power to do just that. Expel them from their human hosts. Only you can see them for what they truly are." And Danny says, "The Chi Lin," and one of them responds, "That was an ancient name for killing you iron fools. We hunt mischievous spirits now. We are the Wraithlings." And the 3 of them attempt to take down Danny Rand once and for all, but not really to any avail. Danny says, "Tell your master I'm coming for him." Danny sends these people flying out into the street as he expels the Chi Lin from these people's bodies. And there's civilians on the street and they say, "Yo, he just kicked that family's ass. I've got you on video, freak." Danny continues to head towards Rand Corp, which is obviously his corporation that he owns, and this commentator says, "The one you're after is waiting for you there. He's ordered his minions to slow you down. He knows you're on borrowed time. Keep moving forward." But on his way there, he sees a bunch more Chi Lin demons trying to come attack him, but the normal people in New York have no idea what he's doing. They can't see the Chi Lin, and these random civilians are trying to stop Danny from getting anywhere. But that's when Miles Morales shows up and says, "Hey, where'd that ninja with the fiery hands that beat up that family go?" He asks one of the ladies that got beat up, "Where'd that masked dude run off to?" And she says, "How did I get outside? What happened?" And Miles is like, "Huh, he really did a number on you." And she's like, "What masked dude? You?" One other civilian tells Miles he went went down into the sewers, Spidey, and Miles says, appreciate it, buddy. Danny finds himself down in the sewers, and whoever's talking to him says the tunnels will soon be flooded with his minions. We see Danny down in the underworld losing the fight to this dragon, and this person says, and you feel uncertain about yourself. Where is that immortal spirit? You have a long road ahead. And Danny says, I know, and I've already come this far. We see Miles heading down into the sewers after Danny, and he says, my spider sense is tingling something fierce. Misty'd tell me to stop talking out loud right now. Nice try, my guy. He says, let's use the old venom blast to light things up down here. And he does, and it reveals all of the Chin-Li that are chasing after Danny. Danny looks at Miles and says, good, now you see them too. And Miles is like, dang, I wish I didn't. Your gang's ugly. This person tells Danny they will use that boy as their puppet, just like the family. And once again, we see Danny taking another shot at that dragon, saying, I'm a living weapon. We go back to the sewers, and Miles says, hey, where'd your buddies go? Danny says, kid, you're in over your head. Keep moving. And Miles says, don't tell me what to do. Danny says, just trust me. And Miles is like, why should I? Danny says, I'm not your enemy. They're trying to possess you. And Miles says, I'm not here to play your game, dude. This is all one sick illusion, and I ain't falling for it. Danny says, I don't have time for this. And he uses an immense amount of power to punch the ground, setting off a crazy explosion. And the person who granted Danny his power says, use your new powers wisely. You're burning too quickly. You've only been granted limited energy to complete your mission. Miles says, whoa, what did you just do? And Danny says, I delivered them to hell. As a friend of Misty's, trust me when I say, stay out of my way. And Miles says, Misty, how do you know? Where did he go? Danny has crawled up out of the sewers and is climbing a fire escape with the Chin-Li still following close behind him. And we see Danny in the underworld continue to climb up this cliff when a voice calls out to him and says, don't stop now. We see a little montage of Danny using different fighting moves to take out the Chi-Lin as we see them all get expelled from their human host bodies. Danny gets to the top of this building and he can see Rand Corporation in the distance, but in the underworld someone tells him, you're almost there. And Danny's like, what? I know that voice. This must be the same path he went through. And that person says, grab my hand. And Danny says, you have no idea how good it is to see you. That voice pulls him up and it's revealed to be Orson Randall, the predecessor to the Iron Fist mantle before Danny Rand. And he asks Danny, are you ready for your first lesson? The book of the Iron Fist? Everything we learned was a lie. And that brings us to the very end of the issue, where we can see the Chi-Lin continue to chase Danny as his power seemingly begins to run out. However, by the looks of it, I think we can expect Danny to take back his Iron Fist mantle due to the training he's about to receive from Orson Randall. I really enjoyed this first issue by Jason Liu. I was a little hesitant going into this issue because I have read some of Jason Liu's work before. In particular, his Dazzler run and his Sentry run I have read, and I did not like those one bit, so I was hesitant to pick this book up. However, this is a solid start to a new series. At first, I thought this was going to be a one-shot, but it was confirmed this is going to be a continued series. And honestly, I just hope that they bring Danny back as the Iron Fist. We've seen two people be Iron Fist at the same time, and I don't know why we can't have Danny and Lin Lee be the Iron Fist at the same time. They make a great duo, and I would love to see that. Lin Lee, if you're not aware, is the person who becomes Iron Fist after Danny Rand. He was originally known as Swordmaster, and Lin Lee is pretty interesting to me, mainly because he's got a dope-ass outfit, but also because he became Iron Fist without taking out the heart of Shu Lao and did not possess the mark of the Iron Fist at first. Eventually, he would go on to defeat Shu Lao, and he was given the Iron Fist mark by a Celestial called the Progenitor. And honestly, that's one of the things I find most interesting about Lin Lee, is that initially he felt unworthy of the Iron Fist mantle because of the fact that he did not go through the proper steps to become Iron Fist. But he's also pretty interesting to me because of the fact that he is Iron Fist, but he can still use the swords that he previously used as Swordmaster. At one point, his sword, the Sword of Fu Shi, has magical powers, was shattered, and several of the shards became embedded within his hands. And so now he can use those powers through his fists. He did have a solo run that came out in 2022, and it only lasted about 5 issues, which honestly is kind of disappointing because I think that he's a cool character. I would love to see more of him. I would like to see Danny come back as Iron Fist and see both of them team up. I think that would be awesome. I'm very much looking forward to the rest of this book, particularly Luke Cage's reaction to seeing Danny come back to life. Obviously, Danny and Luke having that very, very long publishing history. They've been best friends forever, so I can't wait to see that moment moment in this comic book run. As far as death and resurrection goes in comic books, I say this is a pretty solid resurrection. I mean, there's a lot to compare it to, but I like this first issue a lot. That is enough yapping from me. Let me know what you guys think about the first issue. Are you going to keep reading? Or are you going to pick up the next issue? Let me know what you guys think, and I will see you in the next video.